Hey, what's up everybody? 2015 Toyota Prius wheel bearing replacement. I got a Toyota Prius. It is the hybrid Synergy. It's the 1.8, and first thing you want to do is take your hubcap off if your vehicle still has it. We're going to go ahead and get this off, and it's a 21 millimeter on the lug nuts. That is if you have stock OEM wheels. So make sure your vehicle's lifted up safely as well. Once you get the wheel off, we got to get to this wheel bearing. So first what we want to do is lube up this axle and this axle nut. Basically these are a bolt-on. This is the new one right here. Here's my part number. We'll just get that out the way. Links in the description, so check the description and for links to parts and tools. We want to spray this guy right off the bat because we want this penetrate oil to get the rust off and kind of lube this shaft up. That didn't sound right. Just so when we get to it we can take that off without problems. So now you want to take a 14 millimeter and we're going to get the caliper off. If the inner nut spins, hold it with some pliers, or you can put a 17 millimeter right in here and then you could loosen it. So we'll get the caliper off, take that 14 off. Once that bottom bolts out, we can kind of lift this up, and you could actually just lift this up and then kind of swiggle it and slide it straight backwards. And then you don't have to really take the bolt out on the top right here. Just slide it backwards. It should come out. Otherwise, you can just take the bolt out if you don't want to do what I just did there. Try not to stress your brake hose out. Set that to the side just for the moment. We'll secure it in a minute. Go ahead and get that off now. Let's go ahead and pop these pads out. Basically, what we're doing is we're taking everything off so we can get this down to the hub. So get these pads out, try not to lose any of the hardware or the shims, don't get any grease or nothing on the pad material, and then we'll get this rotor bracket off as well. Go ahead and take this, it's a 17 millimeter for the rotor bracket bolts. Go ahead and just bust these loose here. These will be tighter than the caliper bolts, but they're not too bad. It's a 17 right here and right here. Go ahead and get these off, and then don't let that rotor bracket drop and hit you in the toes or nothing like that. So we go ahead and get this off here. These are long bolts. Get the bottom one. Alright, cool. Now we can take this bracket and just set it over to the side safely out of the way. Got everything out of the way. Alright, so now the rotor, it might be a little rusted on. Might need some help getting off. There's these bolt holes in the front, and you could run bolts down to push the rotor off the hub. Now also you could do is put a lug nut on partially and then just hit this with that rubber mallet, not a real mallet, not a metal one, just a rubber one to knock it off. But I'm going to show you a trick. So to secure your caliper, and then there's a 12 millimeter bolt right here. Go ahead and get this off. Be very gentle with it. Try not to mess up the threads, and you could actually run this down through this hole right here and it'll push the rotor off the hub. This one's rusted on pretty good. Now the trick is just to be kind of slow and steady with this, just so it'll push off the hub. But the threads in these rotors, whenever you try to do this, if it's too much resistance, it'll just strip the threads out in the rotor, and then you're gonna have to like hit it with a mallet or something. But hopefully you can just go back and forth between the two holes with a bolt or maybe two bolts and get the rotor off. I recommend not using the bolt from the vehicle if you can help it. Like if you have one in the garage, you could just use that one because it does kind of stress the threads out a little bit. You don't only do that brake hose bolt when you're in a bind and you got no other choice. So then I'll just go ahead and put this guy back in here. It didn't really mess up this one at all, so I'm good. But now my rotor's off. Alright, cool. Now we're getting closer. Now this is held in by 4 bolts. Thank you Toyota for making it a bolt-on one. But we gotta still get this axle nut off. You're gonna need new axle nut as well. Parts in the description and comment section. Now this is smashed down. We gotta unsmash that. What you want to do is put something in there and hammer it to push that up. I have a tool that I'm going to use, but I'm going to link one in the description that's like a really good tool. But right now I just got this little punch drive right here. I'm going to do it so this nut can come off. Now if you don't do this and you just get that socket off, you're going to destroy your axle because it's going to destroy the threads on the way off. So you want to get that as lifted as high as you can, like that. I know it's hard to see with the focus and all that, but now that should come off pretty good. Now here's the size. It's an axle nut, 30 millimeter. It's like the 24-point star or whatever it is. Again, parts and tools in the description. I'll have links to everything used in this video. I like to hit this with some lubricant right before I take it off. That way it just comes off easier, and I'm not trying to stress the threads out on the axle or destroy the threads even. So this came off pretty well, actually. I was pretty pleased. That grease I use, it's a little pricey, but it's good stuff. Again, I'm going to get a new axle nut. Always use a new axle nut. And I'm going to clean the threads up a little bit with a brass brush, just so when the new one goes on, it doesn't, you know, there's no like metal shavings or nothing left from the old one. Don't get any metal slivers in your finger though. So this should be able to kind of move back and forth a little bit. Now the bolts in the back, before we take those out, let's mark the backing plate with its position on the steering knuckle. We're going to do that right there, so then we go put it back on and we'll know exactly where it goes. It's a 14 millimeter for the wheel bearing bolts. Now you can get these out without taking the axle out or taking the lower ball joint off. I highly recommend just taking the ball joint off from the bottom off, because it's going to give you a lot more room. I used a 14 millimeter socket with an extension, and I was able to get, by moving this axle a little back like that, I was able just to reach all these bolts. But I recommend taking this lower ball joint off though. It's going to make it a lot easier as far as space goes. It's just 3 17 millimeters. I'll show you how to do it. But once that's off, you're going to have way more room to like do the bolts, taking them off and putting them in, especially if you're going to use like a torque wrench to torque them to the right torque. You're going to need extra space. So before we do that, let's take this wheel speed sensor off. It's a 10 millimeter. Go and this is just one little 10 millimeter bolt. You take that out, and then you're going to pull this guy out right here. Alright, we're going to remove him and then just set him out of the way. I don't know if you for sure have to take that off, but I would do it. Alright, I got the two 17 millimeter nuts and then the one 17 millimeter bolt out of this lower control arm, and you kind of use a pry bar to kind of pry this off and then kind of push these bolts out the way. Be careful, because you will smash your fingers real good if you're not careful with that bottom lower joint. So you kind of hammer this, you can get way more room for the bolts. I got the bolts 14 millimeter, got them out. Now again, this is what I used right here, but you could use whatever tools you got to reach these bolts. The reason why I took the lower ball joint off is because when I go to torque them, it's going to be easier. Toyota wants the whole steering knuckle removed, and they want you to do it all off the car in a vise. So we're not going to do that. We're just going to get this off like this. I kind of had to use a pry bar, not to just really yank or pry on this, but just to kind of help it come out. It was kind of rusted in its little home right there. So we got this off. Backing plate comes off with it. Set those to the side, and like as I said, there's a little rust in there. I'm going to take a little brass brush with some spray and just kind of clean it out a little bit. Nothing too crazy. I'm not trying to gouge the inside of this. I'm just trying to like make it a little bit more clean, so when I put the new one in, it goes on. When I did put the new one on, even with it really clean, it was kind of a tight fit. So you know, I recommend cleaning any rust or debris out of there. I left my one bolt in there as well. Now here's the wheel bearing. Here's the part number again. Now I kind of hit this little shaft with some white lithium grease, just so when it slides into the new bearing, it's fine. It'll slide good. The wheel bearing, if you notice, the top and bottom are different. The bolt holes, you got one side that's really small and one side that's bigger. So this won't just go on just any way. You got to put it on with the smaller bolt holes towards the top, and then the more widened bolt holes on the bottom. So I kind of put it up here, lined everything up, and you want to get all the bolts kind of hand threaded in or started a little bit. You don't want to just crank one bolt down. You want to you know, put one in there, get them all started, run them all down a little bit at a time, go in a circle, and then once you have it pretty much in place, then you could cinch it down with your torque wrench. 30 foot-pounds is what the repair manual says right here. It says 30 foot-pounds. Honestly, it doesn't seem tight enough. I gave it a little extra because 30 foot-pounds, you torque it, you could still turn the bolt pretty easy with a socket. So I gave it a little extra turning, but you know, do what you think is best. I got my new axle nut here. Here's the part number. Link in the description for that one. I highly recommend getting a Toyota one. Go ahead and hand thread this guy on all the way, and then we're gonna go ahead and tighten him down. Same socket. I'm gonna torque him off camera there, and then once he's torqued down, I'm gonna push that down. Let's see what the torque is on this one. 159 foot-pounds. All right. So once he's torqued down, I'm gonna, I don't want to say crush, but I'm gonna hit that one spot that was lower before. But before I do that, I'm just gonna double check that putting the axle nut on didn't loosen up these bolts at all. So I'm just gonna go and make sure those are at the correct torque real quick off camera. All right, did that. Now I got my hammer and I got a little punch drive to push the axle nut lock down. You're gonna hit this top part and then it'll knock that down to lock it into place so this axle nut doesn't back off. Of course you do this after it's torqued, but go ahead and just put this right here. I'm gonna link some tools. I just kind of use stuff that I've had for years, but I'll link some, you know, the correct tool to do this. Okay, so got that down. That ain't gonna go nowhere. You don't gotta go crazy hard on that. Just get it to, you know, go down a little bit, but you don't gotta like destroy the nut going in. Now I'm gonna go ahead and put my wheel speed sensor back in. Now that the new wheel bearing is in place, I'm gonna put that 10mm back in. Now also be real careful putting that wheel bearing in, because it can go sideways on you, or it could appear like it's in all the way but it's really not. So just be on it with the wheel bearing install. Now we're gonna put this rotor back on like that, and from here it's just all going downhill. We just put everything back how we found it. Put the rotor bracket back in, 17mm right here. Tighten those down. I'll do it off camera. I'm not gonna force you guys to watch me do all this stuff again. Put the brake pads in just how you found them. You could put a little lube on the edges of them if you want. I did that. Makes it kind of work better. All right, now the brake line. Make sure you don't twist it or nothing going back in. Put this pin back in and we'll slide this over. Now, for some reason my piston extended out a little bit, so I had to kind of compress it with my tool. On my brake tool here, I just pushed that piston in a little bit and then pushed it back over like that, and then it went over just fine. Put the bolt in. Now when make sure your brake line hose isn't twisted or nothing. A lot of rookies will twist this and get it all bent up, and then they have weird brake problems. Brakes don't work right. So make sure that's nice and straight. Make sure it's not twisted or flexed or stressed out. Go ahead and get this like that, and put the caliper bolt back on the bottom here. We gotta put our bottom ball joint in. Hold this with a 17mm, tighten this down right here, just like that. And then this guy, you gotta, there's a spot in the control arm, a hole. You could put your pry bar in there and pull it down, and then push the steering knuckle over and kind of line it up. It could be kind of like a little bit of a challenge, but it's not too bad. And then you get your bolt in, your two nuts in, tighten those down, make sure those are tight. I'm going to try to hook up some torque specs in the description. Make sure everything's good, and you know, make sure everything spins without making noise. Make sure your backing plate ain't rubbing the back of the rotor. That happened to me. And then put the wheel back on, the hubcap back on. Put the wheel on, put your 21mm lug nuts on. I believe the torque spec is 79 or 80 foot-pounds. Get that tight. I tightened it off camera there, and then put our lug, and that's it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you later.
Alright guys, that's all the information I got for you. The rest of the video is just a couple products and other stuff I got going on. Totally up to you if you want to stick around. I got a 15% off promo code for AXEL LED headlights. These are the best headlights in my opinion. They just recently upgraded all their technology, so their LED lights are even brighter than the others that are still using old tech. I've had many LED lights as far as like headlights, interior lights, whatever, brake lights, and these are the best. They don't flicker, they're not cheap. They don't like go out on you. All you gotta do is go to the AXEL website, type in your vehicle information, then look up what kind of light you want. All their products will pop up. And these are available on Amazon as well, but if you go to the website and use GearmoAuto in the discount code spot, you will get 15% off. So if you're looking for new brighter upgrades, check these out. Hey, what's up guys? I want to tell you about Quantum Soap. It's a new men's soap company. They got many different bars of soap, each with their own ingredients and fragrance and texture. They even have grittier bars for like mechanics or whoever, like the dark matter bar is extra gritty. If you go to their website, it's free shipping over $50. Each bar is about $5. You also get a 10% discount code for your first order. They're coming out with many new soaps. It's definitely worth checking out. Of course, I have a discount code for you. It's GearmoAuto. If you type it in at checkout, you'll get 10% off. You could use it as many times as you want every time you order. These make great gifts to husbands, boyfriends, uncles, nephews. They even got the Galactic Mechanic Bar. It's super gritty for mechanics, so check that out. Type in the GearmoAuto promo code. That way they know you're one of the homies. And that's it, guys.
You're pretty good.